Caroll Spinney means to me is he's one of my heroes, and it's not just because of who he is as a puppeteer and who he is as a performer and the mark on pop culture that his characters have left on world society for the last 40 years, but really who he is as a person as well, because I had the great fortune of meeting Caroll Spinney a few years ago at New York Comic Con, and I was instantly struck by just his genuine sincerity and kindness and spirit for people and for treating people right and really having an affinity for his fans and making a connection with them. But it's a funny story how I ended up going to New York Comic Con, because although I've been going to Comic Cons for most of my life, I don't live in New York, and I had not planned on going to New York Comic Con. I was in New York to see the Lord of the Rings concert at Radio City Music Hall, and at the last minute I found out that New York Comic Con was going on at the same time. And I've been to a lot of Comic Cons. I didn't think I was going to go. I had no reason to go. Wasn't really interested at that time. And then I found out last minute Caroll Spinney was going to be there. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's one of my heroes. I have to meet him. I have to see him and be there. So at the last minute, I go to New York Comic Con on that Saturday, and I get inside the building and it's completely sold out. I was like, oh no, oh no. And there was a sign there that said there were several local comic book stores that had some tickets left if you're able to get them quickly enough. So I call up the first comic book store, completely sold out. Second comic book store, sold out. Third one said, we have a few tickets left. Oh, so it was such a race. Get in the cab, try and get there. There was so much traffic. I was so nervous. But we made it. I got one of the last tickets for sale, and we headed back to the convention center and got in line for Caroll Spinney. And what was remarkable is that not only is he a puppeteer, but he's a brilliant artist in his own right and a cartoonist. And he was drawing portraits of his characters for people. And the woman ahead of me in line was getting a picture of Oscar the Grouch drawn. And you could tell, I mean, Caroll Spinney was just putting so much time and effort into this drawing for her. He took it very seriously. He wasn't rushing. He spent a lot of time on it. It came out beautifully. And at the end, the woman realized that she didn't have a single protective covering to keep this piece of paper in. She was worried that it was going to get knocked around and crease just from going around the center. And it was at that point that I realized, I was reminded of something that I read in Caroll Spinney's autobiography a few years ago, which is, he was talking about compassion for strangers. How one time he was in New York and he sees this old man holding bags of groceries and trying to walk down this step, and he's too afraid to walk down. And Caroll Spinney goes up to him and asks him, what's the matter? Do you need help? And the guy was so worried that he'd fall down this step and no one would help him. And so Caroll Spinney helped him down the step. And it's just, so I'm standing in line watching this woman like worried about, oh no, her drawing that Caroll Spinney worked so hard on was going to get ruined. And instantly I was thinking about, you know, compassion, this story of compassion, and how Caroll Spinney always tried to imbue his characters, Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, show their compassion for people. Even Oscar. Oscar is a grouch, but he's still, you know, full of compassion for people. So I went and I took out my my program, my Comic-Con program, and I gave it to the woman, and I noticed Caroll Spinney looked up and smiled. He noticed that like little random act of kindness. And so then it was my turn. I got to meet him, and he gave me this signed autograph, and it says, "Love, Big Bird, and Rod and Lee Oscar," which I thought was so cute, the way he personalized it. And the thing that I was struck by with him is, like, right away, he asks you your name, and he does the Big Bird voice for you without even being prompted. And, you know, it was like... It meant so much to me, you know, here's this character from your childhood, and, you know, you're interacting with them. And so I shook his hand and I said, I just want to thank you so much for what you've done. And I said, and I looked around the convention center and I said, what you've done for all of us. When I looked around, I realized that there wasn't a single person in that convention center who hadn't been touched by Caroll Spinney's work, who didn't grow up with Big Bird and Oscar and everything, you know. And how often, when do you get the chances to meet someone like that who's had an impact on literally everyone you know? On everyone. He really is a living legend, and he's just very, very talented and inspiring because, you know, the work that Muppeteers do, I've always considered it so noble because everything about their job is just positive. The whole experience is that they are doing something that is not only to make you laugh, not only to teach you, in Sesame Street's case, you know, teach you educational things, but also to show kindness and compassion. And the whole spirit of the Jim Henson Company was about, you know, peace and getting along and working together and being a world community. And Caroll Spinney has just been an ambassador for 40 years for this message that Jim Henson just put out into the world. And I had read that Steve Whitmire, another Muppeteer, had said that when he was auditioning to become a Muppeteer at the age of 18, he met with Jane Henson, Jim Henson's wife, and they were eating out someplace and there were kids around, and he had brought all his puppets, and Jane wanted him to entertain the kids. And after he got the job, she told him that it wasn't just that he had to be a good puppeteer because they knew that they could teach him things and improve him. It was that he had to be a people person and he had to be able to work with kids. And I feel like when Jim Henson saw Caroll Spinney performing at those puppetry festivals, that it wasn't just that he saw a brilliant performer, he saw someone who had the kindness in his heart to be a good role model for children, to be able to work with them and have this sense of empathy and understanding, and in the form of Big Bird, to be a surrogate, to be an alter ego for children. And another thing I told Caroll Spinney was, you know, when you're a kid, Big Bird is your best friend. And I think that's true for all children. Even now, like now he's a 4-year-old. I have a 4-year-old cousin. At the time when I met Caroll Spinney, he was 2, and I would watch Sesame Street with him. And so I told Caroll Spinney about my cousin and how, you know, I introduced him to that movie, Follow That Bird, and told him that I was going to meet Big Bird and Oscar. And Caroll Spinney said to me, well, don't tell him that, you know, there's a man inside the puppets, you know, that wait till he's older. And, you know, it's true. And when I showed, at the time, my 2-year-old cousin this picture, he pointed to them and he said, that's Big Bird, that's Oscar, and that's a man. And I hope, you know, someday when he grows up, he'll be able to say, and that's Caroll Spinney, you know, and that, oh, you met him. And this is the picture of when I met Caroll Spinney at New York Comic Con. So when I heard about this movie, I Am Big Bird, this documentary, I was just so thrilled. I thought it was a fantastic idea. It's a fitting tribute to someone who has perhaps lived in the shadow of his own fame. You know, his characters are completely world famous. Everyone knows them and loves them. Maybe not as many people can name Caroll Spinney by name, but I think this documentary is a great idea to show people just how hard he has worked, how talented he is, and how kind he is, and that the reason why his characters come off as so likable and friendly and approachable is because that's who Caroll is himself. He is just a kind person who deserves to have his story told. So congratulations, Caroll, on this movie that all us Muppet fans are looking forward to so much, and you deserve it, and I know it's going to be a huge success, and I wish you all the best. And you know, one of the thing is, the remarkable thing about the fact that you're still performing after over 40 years, still performing the characters, is, I mean, in your book you mentioned that the Big Bird puppet, the head weighs 5 pounds. Now, I tried a puppetry class once, and I mean, everyone in the class, we were all novices, and just holding your hand above your head for 5 minutes, your arm starts to hurt right away. And some of the people who were older couldn't hold their arms up that long. And the fact that you can roller skate with a 5-pound Big Bird head over your own head is just remarkable. It's inspiring. I'm glad that you're still doing it for all of us, and your work is going to continue to be shared with generations, and everyone will get to be touched by your spirit and your humor and your kindness. When you're a kid, I remember being a little kid and trying to figure Big Bird out. I would watch the puppet. I didn't even think of him as a puppet, really. I couldn't figure out how he worked. I knew that there had to be a guy inside him somehow, but I never conceived as a child that your hand was actually in Big Bird's head. To me, I thought, oh, your hands must be in the wings. So Big Bird just somehow seemed real because I couldn't figure him out. He always seemed real, and my strongest memories of Big Bird are really the specials, Big Bird in China and Big Bird in Japan, because when you see these characters interacting with the real world, with the Great Wall of China, and then they're not on blue screens like nowadays, you see these real locations with the puppets, it makes it so real to children and real to us now. It's remarkable what you've accomplished in film and television, and we're going to keep on watching. All of us Muppet fans are just going to keep on watching. As long as you're willing to perform your characters, we're going to watch it. We're going to love it. So thank you, Caroll Spinney.